Memoirs of Beloved Mary, Mother of Jesus.
For the mighty God has done great things for me, and His mercy will reach from age to age. And
Chapter 12. An Address by Beloved Mary, Mother of Jesus. Good Friday morning, April 8th, 1955. On Thought Forms of Blessings Sent from Class. Thoughts at Foot of Cross on First Good Friday. Mary's vow to Jesus to stay and start Christian Dispensation. Mary's early experiences in temple and with archangels. Memories of meeting and association with Joseph. Joseph's passing. Meeting disciples and association with them. Training with and of elemental kingdom. Importance of making friends with elemental nature kingdom. Beloved and blessed children of my bosom, friends of my heart, co-workers with God in establishing the glory and majesty of His kingdom, how I love you. How my solicitude, my friendship, my devotion has flowed toward your life flame that has burned so brilliantly, so constantly, and so enthusiastically amid the great seas of Maya. Each of you tends the candle of your own light, breathing upon your individual vows the enthusiasms of your personal selves. However, by your cooperative service, you are emitting a light which has encompassed the entire planet through the endeavors of just a handful of earnest, devoted, and blessed life streams. One does not know just how far a blessing will go when it is sent forth from the heart of love. A thought form of blessing no larger than the size of one's fingernail, with beautiful wings upon it, created by love within the heart and released to bless life, may encircle the entire planet. It may rest upon the shoulder of some man, woman, or child who is downhearted, giving just the right strength and courage required for that one to again take heart and face victoriously the problems of their daily lives. Such an one would be encouraged anew by a blessing born in your breast, issued from your heart or lips, but always propelled by feeling. Lovely ones, as you stood together today and in the preceding days of this class, your sanctuary looked like one of those beautiful Eucharist cups which has been fashioned in memorial of the First Communion service. From it has poured forth these various thought forms, each engendered by your own particular vibratory action and the ray to which you belong. All of them had tiny wings, and they have gone north, south, east, and west, anchoring in many human hearts and in many of the forces of nature, remaining ensouled there by a devic being or a cherubic being as the encouragement of your light and as a lasting and permanent gift from this class. You see, it is not enough to issue the decrees, the fiats, and the blessings, and then, when they have spent themselves, to let the world return to sleep again. Those decrees, fiats, and blessings must be made alive and sustained in light eternal, so that they live and grow, even as does the light of my sun, increasing in splendor, in magnetism, and in the power to stir other life streams to a like accomplishment. That is the activity of the light of God that never fails, the activity of those of us who serve it. In the Ascended Master's realm, every thought, every feeling, and every spoken word is so perfect, so beautiful, that it has earned the right to live forever and become a permanent radiation of blessing to this universe. So this week we have carefully combed over the energies which you have released. We have sent forth those which have earned the right to live in this physical appearance world and the mental and feeling worlds of mankind as well. From the Eucharist, which is the body of this class, made up of the living cells of your own life and light, there has flowed a benediction to the nature kingdom and the human kingdom too, which will be felt long after you return individually to your small orbits and your respective localities. Today, on 1,000,000 altars, candles are burning to my Son. Today, before many pulpits, knees are bent and the words of the rosary are going forth. Through the worship of the people today, remembrance of me too is rising like a blue cloud of incense, not only here in America, but in Europe and the Orient as well. All that magnetized energy becomes a bridge over which my life may flow back into the hearts of those who remember Mary, those who remember Joseph, and those who remember Jesus. Abstract as their devotions are, through this activity this morning, we bring back to them each one the blessing of a simple and homely family who lived but to serve God and to do His will. We lived to write on the records of Akasha a message of hope, of God's goodness, of Jesus' light and life, so that succeeding generations might read it, hearts be kindled, and spirits stirred. It was our hope that here and there among the plodding masses, there might be one or more who would step forth into the shining footprints of our beloved Jesus, upon the path of light, and walk upwards, even as my beloved Son did, into the glory of the resurrection and the ascension. We wrote on the Akashic records, and so we prayed in constant vigilance. We lived a natural life and closed a pilgrimage. When our days were done, through the graciousness of God and the mercy of His love, we were called home. There seemed to have been little accomplished except for the very few who had the honor of proximity to the beloved Master and His message. It seemed as though there had been but little accomplished too when my strong young boy was placed on Calvary's cross. It seemed that little had been accomplished by his words of wisdom, his life of grace, his miraculous healings. John and I stood at the foot of that cross, and as I looked upon the turbulent and curious mob gazing at the seemingly helpless one, I reflected for a moment, thinking, what has all our long life come to? What have we accomplished? We touch the hearts of a few, perhaps, and even those few are scattered today. Youth and beauty here are wilted. Yet, on an Easter morning sometime later, as I stood looking at the resuscitated form of the one I loved so well and kissed his blessed hand, as I saw the morning sun reflected on his shining hair and that luminous warmth in his eyes, as I felt the very texture of the robe I had woven with my own hands, I thought, yes, even if one man has done this, even if no one but myself and he should ever know of this victory, it has been worth it all. What one has done, all may one day do. You see, that was the promise of the Father of Life before we took embodiment. That was the promise of Lord Maitreya before we took the initiation, that if one could do it, and one would do it, all men, all women, all children would have like opportunity when they chose to accept it. Therefore, beloved Jesus and I stood that Easter morning in a great happiness of accomplishment, and we took a new vow together. We vowed then that which we had begun in simplicity, but in great faith, we would sustain, so help us God. Even though our paths might part temporarily, although at inner levels we should not meet again for some time, we would sustain the birth of the Christian Dispensation until the resurrection became not only a creed, but a manifest, externalized truth to the decadent flesh of all mankind. So when Jesus said to me, "Will you tarry for a while?" I said, "Son, I who have lived so long for you, I who have breathed for nothing else but to give you the courage of my life, I shall remain, if it be an eternity." There we made the pact that we later fulfilled at Bethany when Jesus walked up that beautiful pathway to the lovely rock where I had prayed so often. He to walk triumphantly into the heart of the Father from whence he came. I to remain with a few, the few who had heard his voice, the few who had felt the heart throb of his presence, the few who were then scattered and shaken. I was to be their strength, their comfort, and their love. Then together we would magnetize whatever currents Jesus in his light and wisdom would send to us. We did this so that the Christian Dispensation, which would live for 2,000 years on our light, might have the vitality, the fire, and the necessary spiritual strength to sustain itself when we had passed from the screen of life. Beloved ones, you do not yet know what it means to have a complete and thorough dedication to a God purpose. You are in the process of learning, and that brings you so close to my heart, for you know I am your mother. I am your mother, and my love for you is as great as it ever was for Jesus as I cared for him. The immaculate concept which I hold for you is as shining and perfect as that given to me by Gabriel on that day, when again he brought to me through the veil of flesh remembrance of my vow, remembrance of Jesus' ministry. No whit more beautiful was Jesus' immaculate concept than is your own. Ah, no, you will come to know as you rise and rise in consciousness that all of God's children, each and every one, is as dear as the other. The fullness of perfection for each one becomes the very motivating power of the pulse beat of your sweet hearts. You know, I was only 3, very small in Earth's count of years, when Anne and Joachim took me to the temple. That temple was very large to a baby's eyes and very impersonal, dear hearts. My mother and father were very real to me. So was my home and my baby life. Yet that day my parents performed the great service of renunciation, and I entered that temple life to remain there until I had attained my maturity. I remember the kindness of those who cared for me, but the disciplines of the temple are never softened for the individual. Not even for my Jesus were the disciplines of Luxor softened, nor for John the disciplines of the Essenes. They were not softened either for a tender child in the temple in which I abode. It was a lonely life for a small child who was introspective in the extreme, and those who were kindest of all to me were the Archangels. I had newly come from heaven. I had not yet forgotten the shine of their wings, the luster of their hair, nor the magnificence of their presence. In the small cell which was mine, often at night the great and shining presence of Lord Michael would come and sit by my bed. In order to assist and instruct me, he would have a group of small defending angels march up and down across the bed for me, just as you would allow your children to play with toy soldiers. However, these were real, moving beings. In this manner he taught me, with the gentleness and kindness of a mother, the activities of the defending angels, those whose particular service it was and is to keep the souls of men free wherever possible from the subtle influences of suggestions of impurity and imperfection. Then, as we grew to understand each other, these little figures would act out the various stories which he was giving to my consciousness to show the all-power of God. Early in my activities in the temple, the priests were instructed that I was to be particularly trained in the powers of concentration. I think I was not more than 5 years of age when, with stylus in hand, I was given the chore of copying off the letters from the scriptures, and while my maiden friends played in the grasses and enjoyed the dance, I would laboriously figure out these letters and endeavor to keep my mind from the shining sun which I adored, from the blue sky, and from all the joys of childhood. In the afternoon, I would oft-times go as far away as I could from the groups of individuals to a certain place where I would have the comfort and sweetness of the great Archangel Raphael, whose love was so great. I cannot describe to you the happiness of that association, the beauty of that companionship. Later came the experiences with the strength of the mighty Gabriel, the infinite power of his purity and light. However, having accepted the karma of the race, as I grew in years, the remembrance of the angels' wings became more dim. No longer could I hear their voices. Then there came a period, the night time of my soul, even as each of you has had or will have such a night time, when the glory of heaven seems shut away. During that time, I had to ponder in my heart upon the oneness of our Lord God and myself. This I continued to do until I was released from the temple. Then came the days when I was awaiting the appearance of the guardian of my life. I can never forget the day I first met Joseph. I can never forget it because behind him, for the first time in a good many years, I saw the blazing figure of the great Archangel Zadkiel. I really did not see the person of Joseph at all, but I knew it was he for whom I was meant. Behind and above him stood the Shining One, Zadkiel, Archangel of the seventh ray, thus reminding me of the angelic kingdom which it seemed to me had receded into the imaginings of childhood. I remember those days when Joseph and I prepared for the birth of Jesus. I remember making the small garments for that infant and enjoying the association with Joseph, who was in himself both a mystic and a very advanced spiritual man. He was a member of the Essene Brotherhood, one who knew much of the law and who imparted to me a great deal of that law in those months of waiting. Together we planned our future. Together we prayed that each of us might have the strength to fulfill our mission in glory. So we prayed that night in Bethlehem when I curled that first fine hair of Jesus over my finger, and Joseph, smiling, said, "I think now we are over the worst of the experience." We were ready then to settle down into the growing years. I remember waking in the night and seeing Joseph standing in the doorway. I felt that he was troubled. I arose quickly and went to his side. He said, "Mary, I had a warning in the night. I know not whether it is of God and the angels, or whether it is the fears of the psychic realm which are pressed against my conscious mind. It seems not possible that he who is born to such a great victory could be so soon subject to such cruelty. Yet I am told we should flee from this land at once." I said, "Joseph, let us get still. Let us pray." We did so, and I soon felt within myself the truth of that message. You know how we took our babe and left. You know how we entered into the land of Egypt. Behind us the blood of infants flowed in the streets, and I vowed then, and Jesus later with me, that we personally would assist every one of those children to their ascension whose lifeblood was a sacrifice, who died that he might live. That vow shall be fulfilled in the name of God. For a time we lived in Egypt, and our beloved Jesus went quickly and easily through all the experiences there, all the experiences at Luxor. I was not permitted to go with him to study within the temple, but I was trained in the powers of concentration and privately given the same instruction by beloved Serapis Bey. That instruction was on the resurrection of the body, the suspension of the breath, and the preparation for the public manifestation of that resurrection which would take place through my Son for the blessing of all mankind. Later came the years when we returned to Jerusalem, when the immediate, let us say, troubles and dangers were gone. Then came the growing years, when we had to fulfill the letter of the Scripture, when Jesus went up to the temple and fulfilled in obedience all the letter of the law, becoming in truth the Prince of the house of David. There we enjoyed those sweet years together. Finally, one day Joseph said to me, "Mary, I am told that I have not yet too many years ahead. There will come a parting when you must go on alone. I have been told by my teacher that it is time now to introduce our son to the Essenes. It is also time for me to bring James and John into your presence and to set them upon their spiritual path. Then I am to go out to seek those men whom my teacher has told me will be the strength of you and Jesus in the days that are to come. James and John had been raised by a kindly woman, and Joseph, their guardian, knowing that her span of life was about over, was concerned within himself about the boys, yet young in years. He said to me, "Beloved Mary, do you think we should bring James and John into our home at this time? Or do you feel that it is wiser that we keep it sanctified for the presence of our blessed Jesus?" I said at once, "I shall not make this decision alone. Let us rest it with the Lord." As we did, we found it was best to keep our beloved Jesus in that uninterrupted sanctified peace. So Joseph then said, "I shall go to these boys and ask which one of them will accept the role as head of the household, and which one is willing to take the training preparatory to being the right hand of Jesus in the days that are to come." Joseph went to the home of the boys. James, being stronger, older, and more of a practical man, took upon himself the responsibilities of the household. John was delivered to the Essenes, where he remained in their training for some years. After John had gone, Joseph said to me, "I think I had best take James with me down to Galilee. He is young to live so alone, and I shall take him to those men who are to stand with the beloved Jesus in the days ahead. I shall acquaint myself with those men, and according to their capacity to understand, I shall endeavor to alert them as to things which are to come. That is, if you can spare me a while, beloved." I said, "Joseph, we live but for one thing, for the victory of this ministry, for the education of those who can assist us. You are as free, beloved, as though I were not in embodiment." Joseph said, "I will make these journeys as short as I can, for my span of years on earth now grows very short. Before I go, I want to have as much association as possible with you and this boy whom I love more than life." Joseph then took James and went down into Galilee. There he came upon Peter and Andrew and talked with them. Now this may be surprising to you, at least to some of you who may not know the inner action of the law. But Joseph knew of those disciples for years before Jesus was even aware of who they would be. Joseph talked with these men and brought to each one as much as their consciousness could absorb and the law would permit at that time. Then he returned home, and we discussed them together. Joseph would say, "Mary, there you have a strength in that one. There you will have perhaps a doubt. There you will have a sweetness. Look for these men." I did not personally meet the disciples until some time later, but when I did, Joseph's wise admonitions were of great assistance to me. You see, I had nothing in my whole life but a desire to concentrate upon the immaculate concept of my Son. Therefore, at that time, Joseph did for me and for Jesus the preliminary work in the establishing of the Christian era. Today you are giving the same kind of service to him as you serve the cause of Saint Germain. Editor's note: Our beloved Saint Germain was Joseph in a former embodiment. One day Joseph said, "I'm going to take John to join James at Capernaum. Then my work is done." The parting of beloved Joseph and myself was not a sad one, as partings go. He was conscious that his mission was completed, and may I say, completed in beautiful dignity. Jesus was already the wonderful embodied power of the cosmic Christ, having received that power from Lord Maitreya, whom he had now accepted as his cosmic teacher. Lord Maitreya represents the cosmic Christ to this earth. During Jesus' growing years, our beloved Joseph's service to his life stream was to be his teacher and the example of the Father to him. When Jesus had developed to the place where Lord Maitreya could be his teacher, Joseph's work was done. Through the contact of the disciples with Joseph, they were alerted, not to the personality of Jesus, but to the coming of the Messiah. and they were in the process of preparation for their part in that great event. They were alerted, too, to the truth that such a messiahship was soon to burst upon the screen of life. You see, part of their great initiation would come in recognizing that one whom they were told might come. Joseph did not tell these men that he knew of the actual person who would be that Messiah, but that through the study of the ancient prophecies and teachings of the law, he felt that the time for the appearance of this Messiah had arrived. In other words, they were not told exactly who that Messiah would be. They had to discern the reality of his mission by the feelings within their own hearts when they met him. Not an easy task for any human being. Joseph said to me one day, "Mary, I suggest that you go up to Bethany as soon as possible after my passing. The beloved Jesus must go eastward and seek his own teacher in India, the beloved divine director. You stay in Bethany, and if possible, have Elizabeth and John the Baptist come to visit you. I leave you in the hands of friends." At the hour of Joseph's passing, Jesus and I stood alone with him, and Joseph said, "You know, Mary, I am going to make a vow as I leave this life, as I look upon the beautiful presence of our Son, as I look upon your light and strength, as I find the passing into the Father's home so sweet, I am going to make a vow to life. That vow shall be that someday I shall assist every man, woman, and child belonging to the evolutions of this planet to leave the earth in the same happiness and dignity, the same control of their faculties, the same assurance of life eternal as I do. If they have done their work well, they shall step consciously into the hereafter in peace and joy." Thus our beloved Joseph became the patron of a happy passing. You are all acquainted with that, I know. Those of you who are interested in mankind en masse, if you will so call to him, you can make everyone's passing such a dignified, happy, and beautiful one. Joseph was not gone very long before Jesus prepared to go eastward to India. I went up into Bethany, and there I stayed for a time. I shall not repeat myself, for my experiences are chronicled elsewhere. I found that hill of Bethany, which was to become the place from which Jesus ascended into the glory of perfection, the apex of his ministry. By walking up that hill every day alone, praying and sending forth my invocations for his victory, I was actually making a pattern of light for him. By so doing, I made a pathway, just as every individual does who passes victoriously through the wilderness experiences of human creation. Every such an one makes a wider pathway of faith and truth for those who follow on. So with my own physical body again, as at the time of birth, with my very life, I made a pathway of light for Jesus up that hillside. On the top of that hill, I made a pathway too, here through the psychic and astral realm, connecting with the consciousness of the beloved Vesta, godmother to the earth from our physical sun. Over this pathway my son would later walk in triumph. Even though the strength was his, the vitality and fire, still all of my life added to his, gave him added assistance. Jesus returned from India, you will remember, and we had a short time together before his ministry began in earnest, before he set out to find the men whom Joseph had previously alerted, those who were to become the disciples. Jesus quickly found these men and returned with them in happiness. Then, for the first time, I met those of whom I had previously heard, those whom I knew in character and nature through the descriptions given me by Joseph, my beloved spouse. Through his service, he bridged our consciousness. For the most part, while Jesus was engaged in his ministry, I remained at home, endeavoring to prepare for the victory of the resurrection morning. I have already spoken to you briefly about that. Now, as the ascended ones always come to bring light, strength, beauty, courage, happiness, and positive assurance to all, while I have spoken to you this morning, I have opened my heart. Opened the treasure chest of sweet and sacred memories I have never shared before. During this time also, we, beloved Jesus, and the other radiating masters, have been giving our blessing, our benediction to all mankind. Please feel that while I have been speaking to you, my love and light have entered many bodies where there has been pain, many souls where there has been darkness, many minds where there has been confusion. That love, light, and life shall stand there, giving the assistance long after you have hastened back to your loved ones in this world of form. Before I close, I would like to speak briefly to you on the elemental kingdom with which you are primarily concerned during this class. I was trained for my service to life in holding the immaculate concept for the Master Jesus in the nature temples. Therefore, I can speak with some certain authority upon this subject. My feeling of that authority I wish to charge into your feeling worlds before I leave you today. The nature of the elemental kingdom is to mirror that which it sees. It immediately becomes that which it looks upon. After we, some other maidens and I, were trained, we were given 8 or 10 small elementals to teach. The first experience we had was that, as we appeared before our little audience, every elemental there immediately looked just like us. It was like looking into a mirror and seeing 8 or 10 replicas of ourselves. Each of us had this experience. At first, we did not realize what was happening. I thought within myself, I guess they have given me elementals to teach who have an affinity to me, and that we are all more or less alike, because that is the harmonious way to work. I proceeded for many months under that assumption. Then I began to realize that if I came in pink, they were all in pink too. If I came in blue, they were all in blue also. If I wore a wreath of flowers in my hair, they all had exact wreaths of flowers in theirs. I began to think that through, and I said to myself, now either there are no beings here, and I am externalizing into Maya my own form, or there is something wrong with what I am trying to do. Beloved hearts, in this work you must learn to think. You are given just a hint, let us say, of the entire scheme, and you must develop it. To some you can give an experience and they will develop it. Others still sit with the same kernel of truth at the close of life, and nothing has come forth in the way of flower or fruit. However, if you have determined to get somewhere on the path of life, you will begin to examine the experiences you have. So I did. From then on, I carefully watched the response of the elemental kingdom. I learned then that it was their nature to mirror that which they saw. Well, what had they seen here but just an inexperienced girl, accomplishing nothing? It came to me then. You are not teaching. You are just mirroring yourself in a lot of tiny beings. You are just duplicating that which you are. Now, why don't you create for them something they can fashion? Make it interesting for them. Make this form you create more powerful than yourself, and let yourself sort of fade away until the personal self is no more, and the elementals are then able to create a flower, piece of fruit, or whatever it is that will be of benefit to the kingdom which they serve. I chose something simple that would be of beauty and use on this planet Earth, the maidenhair fern. It is still growing here on Earth today, and was a gift to your planet from God through my consciousness. That day I stopped before I entered the temple, and I said to myself, Mary, you must decrease now so that this form, the fern, which you have created in thought and feeling, may increase and be the predominant figure before the attention of these elementals. You will know whether it is you or your service which is greatest by the reaction of these little mirrors here. I held that maidenhair fern which I had created before my tiny audience, and I endeavored to let myself just fade out, impressing that form on their little consciousnesses. The happiest moment of my life at that time was when they ceased to be little Marys and began to be the embodiment of the form which I had designed for them. I knew then that in that was their mastery. Now, why do I tell you this? I tell it not because my life is of any particular importance to any other being, but because you are now, or soon will be, dealing with the forces of nature all around you. You are now dealing with a world which is in the process of decay. You can believe this or not. You are dealing with the water element, with earth and air. What is that elemental life going to do when it sees turmoil and fear? It will just magnify, mirror, and increase that turmoil and destructive creation unless it can see mastery, control, and balance. You know, even with an angry animal, how it will act when it smells fear. However, when there is serenity and mastery present, the animal creation recedes and the love principle acts. When you have anything unusual happen, you don't even have to go out of the room to prove this. An unexpected sound, the dropping of some article, or something of that nature, there is a shock to the emotional body. What do you think it would be like if you were to have a trembling of the earth, the rising of a tidal wave, or perhaps tremendously destructive cataclysmic activity? What do you think that would be like in the masses of people who have no conscious knowledge of the law, no spiritual training, no discipline, little balance, and not much control of their energies? Yet the nature kingdom would mirror the feelings of those people. Suppose there were 10 million people filled with fear. Add to that the energy swirling in the atmosphere where cataclysmic activity has already begun, and you will have all that distress mirrored in the oceans, in the air, and in the earth as well. If you have a few, only a few, who can decrease the personal self and hold the same mastery Jesus did when he stood in that boat on the Sea of Galilee and commanded it to be still, then you can handle the energies of the nature kingdom. The nature kingdom always knows its master. However, if there is no master in a city, if there is no master in a nation or on the planet, the elementals will follow the patterns of the masses because they will mirror and outpicture that which they see. Think this through. Think it through, beloved ones, and become friends with the forces of the elements. Be positive in your desire for mastery. Be prepared to be master of your own energies and master of all the energies you contact in the world about you. As the beloved Kuan Yin continues her service, I hope you will dedicate and consecrate the decree class you intend to hold tonight to the forces of the elements, getting a warmth of feeling for them, a feeling of friendliness, and a consciousness of their presence. If you will give a few hours of your life, not in tension or fear, but in the release of happy energy, for happy energy is the only kind that will connect with the elementals in the first place, you can render a great service. Beloved ones, having taken much of your time this morning, I give you my love, the love of a mother for her children, the love of my blessed Jesus who will speak to you on Sunday, the love of Holy Lord Maitreya, who guarded and guided both Jesus and myself, the love of John, who was, despite his statement to the contrary the other evening here, a strength and a comfort. Every wish I had, even before it was expressed, he always tried to fulfill. On every occasion where I required help, John always stood by. Truly, he was love. To you, dear heart friends whom I knew in Judea, to you with whom I broke bread, to you who walked with me and our beloved Master Jesus, who accepted and enjoyed the glorious resurrection morning, who walked up the hill of Bethany and saw his shining radiance in the atmosphere, to you a happy and a holy Easter. God is with you until we meet again.